Okay, but when we look into the China social media landscape, actually this one is not it's not really updated, right? Because we still have LinkedIn there. Even though we have a China's version right now, but LinkedIn has also left China, right? Or at least the version, the open version that we were used to. But when we look into this picture, it's like I personally feel a bit overwhelmed. Even when I, for example, if I buy a new phone, a Chinese phone, right, and it comes with so many social media apps already installed in the phone, and it just feels so overwhelming, right? Because those are so many apps and a lot of notifications, and it just feels a little bit overwhelming. And we know that the Chinese market and the China social media landscape is quite complex, and it can be also a lot of noise, right, if we don't use it in the right way. But China's internet is also unique, right? It has many nuances that we need to understand in order to really have a clear and effective strategy.
Hi there, Adrian here, and this is a video from a Zoom session that we do. We do these Zoom sessions every Sunday, and we take questions and answers from the audience, some of our students, some of our members. We never know what questions are coming up, so I'm always excited to do these sessions, and I hope to see you at one of them. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below and check out the other playlists that we have. Thank you, enjoy. So guys, I'm Adrian. As you may know, I started this Motivate community a long time ago, actually about 8 or so years ago. And we started as Motivate Shanghai, based out of Shanghai. And during the COVID times, a lot of our guys from Shanghai, they came down to Bali. We run this big, nice NLP coaching retreat. And then half the people couldn't get back to China because of the COVID stuff. And with that start of COVID, 2020, a lot of our guys in Shanghai and Beijing and other cities, they left China. So at that point, we went from Motivate Shanghai to Motivate Community. So at the moment, we've been doing some workshops in NLP and coaching and stuff for maybe 8 years. And we've had a variety of different people taking the lead. So like the first time I went back to China, one of my clients actually stepped up and she took over Motivate Shanghai or Motivate Community and grew it for a couple of years. And then we had Mila Darush grow it for a couple more years. And 2 other people took it and grew it for a period of time. But the whole time we were doing it, we had a mixed audience, Lao Wai, Zonggoren. And the majority of the time, the audience was pretty much maybe 60% foreigners, 40% Chinese, and those Chinese had lived abroad. They were all pretty fluent in English, and perhaps some of them had better English than myself. So we've always been a bit more focused on the foreigners that live in Asia. But today I've asked Sophia Xavier to share. She actually knows Chinese culture and language down to a T, a lot better than myself. She works with the Solwell Center as social media marketing. And you may have also seen her running the Monday morning motivation sessions every Monday for what, 2-3 years now. And I know before that, she's also been employed with the Portuguese embassy, lived in Macau, Shanghai, and Beijing. So when it comes to social media marketing, I've asked her to share today. And it's not very often we do this, but I actually reached out saying, you know, we had another workshop before on social media marketing, and it's like, we really need to know how to do this for the Chinese audience. So Sophia, I don't think Sophia has anything at all to sell today, but just really here kind of giving from the heart and sharing with all of us so we can share the gift of wellness out to a bigger audience. So anyone in the wellness industry, you're 100% in the right place, because we're going to get some little nuggets today on how to share. And Sophia Xavier is the real deal. She knows it inside out. So I'm really happy to have her here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for these beautiful words, first of all. I was also, my path in the wellness industry also started pretty much with Adrian and with the Motivate community. So I'm very glad to be here again, almost 1 year after, right? And sharing a little bit more about my knowledge on China's social media applied to the wellness industry. So good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. Today, I'm bringing you the topic China's social media for wellness professionals. And before we get started, I just want to do a brief introduction. Adrian already introduced me. I am a life coach and NLP practitioner. I have worked with events for a while. I actually have a translation and interpretation background. So I worked as a translator for a few years, and I still do some translation work, but it's not my main thing at the moment. And I also do marketing and social media work. I'm currently working with Solwell. I'm also very, very grateful for this work with Solwell and with Alicia, which has been a great way for me to combine my knowledge, my different worlds, both, my knowledge of Chinese culture, Chinese society, not only the language, right, but also what I've learned in the events industry, marketing, and apply all of that to Stowell with my passion for self-development. I'm also the host and speaker, and I am the host of Monday Morning Motivation, as Adrian just mentioned. I also take care of marketing at Monday Morning Motivation, and also for China FlexPack, I'm the China social media manager at the moment. All right. So I believe that here we have different people from different backgrounds, with different strengths, with different goals when it comes to China's social media strategy. I believe that some of you are probably more familiar with China's social media, others not so much. Okay, Darko is saying NLP training, changing people's lives. Great. So this is just for you to reflect also, where are you in terms of China's social media? So you can also do this reflection after the presentation, but this will help you to understand where are you in terms of China's social media, right? So when we talk about wellness, we talk about a lot of different things, right? Wellness is a very vague word, and that was I chose this word also for the presentation because it encompasses a lot of different things. We can speak about health, health food. We can speak about mental health, right? Therapy, meditation, hypnosis, NLP, coaching, and so on, right? We can talk about fitness, sports equipment, sportswear. We can talk about personal care, skin, body care, sun protection, and so on, right? When we talk about personal care, it's in China, it's a huge industry as well. We can talk about medicine, right? The supplements, the vitamins, complements, all of that is wellness, right? And today we're gonna be talking a little bit about different parts of wellness and how we can use China's social media to better create to better market our brand, right? So before I get into platforms that we can use to do this, I want to talk a little bit about key trends in the wellness sector in China. So first of all, this is an industry that has been growing a lot in the recent years, especially after the pandemic. There was it was a rapidly growing industry. It just grew a lot during these past 2-3 years, especially specific sectors that we're going to see soon, specific niches inside of the wellness industry. Then we have health and wellness. So this is a niche that has only recently boomed in the Chinese market. We have a growing middle class in China that is willing to pay more for wealth, for fitness, for well-being, to take care of themselves. So we have people that are more and more interested in spending money on wellness. And we have a majority of consumers that are still female. Okay. And of course, we also have, and I've seen these, we have a lot here in Shanghai, a lot of wellness communities also, but also in other cities in China, I've seen lots of wellness communities and also brands that use health and wellness as the foundation for their marketing and their campaigns, even though they might not necessarily be wellness brands, but they use this concept of wellness and health to promote their brands. Some other trends, we have health and fitness apps that are finding their way into an increasing number of smartphones in China, of course, and also the penetration of internet in China. It didn't reach its full potential yet. So in the past few years, there was a lot more of netizens, right? What we call to people that access internet in China. So there's still a lot of potential, and we have people accessing internet from all different backgrounds, educated people, but also a lot of not so educated people. We have people from first tier cities, second tier cities, third tier cities, right? So from all different parts of China as well, and different backgrounds. Another trend is the athleisure lifestyle, which is a mix of sports and fun and basically this lifestyle that is very common, especially in cities like Shanghai right now. And a demand for fitness and yoga clothing. So this is something that as actually I've read a few articles about this, and yoga clothing is like one of the growing sectors in terms of clothing in China. It has grown like 800% or something like that in the past 3 years. Then we have mental health, which is, while still is a taboo in China, because we know that speaking about mental health in China, it's still something that it's not completely something that everyone speaks about, right? But it's something more and more accessible, because there are also efforts to make it available to everyone through apps and teleconsultation, for example. And of course, there's a fever in the fitness industry that you can see in many China social media platforms. And recently, especially with the pandemic, with this big wave in 2022, we saw this fitness fever and this wellness fever on China social media, with a lot of live streams where the coaches, but the fitness coaches, right, taking people to exercise online, right, and people really interested in this type of videos as well. And for last but not least, China dominates the sexual wellness market, both domestically and internationally. And this is something interesting, because we know that sexual health products and services in China are a challenging sector, right, in China because of legal reasons, and also because in terms of social values, it's not a very open thing. But China is dominating this market right now. Okay, but we know that there's a lot of things going on, right? Coaching has also been growing. I think there is more and more awareness, maybe not the awareness that we hope to see fast, But definitely more and more awareness and more interest for wellness. But we also have some challenges. So we see that, and now I'm speaking also, I know that there are probably many expats here with us that are in China but are from another countries. And the thing is, what has been happening in China that I've been observing in the wellness industry is that expats promote their services mostly for expats, right? So it's kind of a big bubble, and this bubble is not the full potential of China's market, right? And in terms of wellness, that is one of the challenges, right? How can we get out of the bubble and actually use the Chinese market in its full potential? We also have other issues. For example, we have seen that right now more and more services are online. For example, yoga classes. Alicia actually wrote a very good article on that, right, on the wellness industry and its challenges, especially during the pandemic, where we saw a lot of free wellness events. And while free wellness events are very important, right? We want to educate the market. We want to promote people's well-being, right? We want all of that, but sometimes that is also harmful, because if we provide a lot of free content and a lot of free things, what happens is that people will take it for granted in a way, right? And are not willing to pay for it later on. Of course, there's a lot of things that we can discuss in terms of challenges, but those are some of the challenges that I see, especially from an expat perspective. And of course, right now we see that many foreigners are leaving China, right? So I think it's a perfect moment to reflect on this and understand that we cannot only focus on foreign audience, right? We really need to shift and to really start using as much as we can the full potential of Chinese market and China's wellness market. Of course, when we think about these, there's also the language barrier. In many cases, not everyone can speak and understand Chinese, right? And for that reason, sometimes that might be a barrier to really access the Chinese market. But I believe that there are many solutions for that, right? There are translators as well that can support, so that can be one solution. Okay, but when we look into the China social media landscape, actually this one is not it's not really updated, right? Because we still have LinkedIn there. Even though we have a China's version right now, but LinkedIn has also left China, right? Or at least the version, the open version that we were used to. But when we look into this picture, it's like I personally feel a bit overwhelmed, even when I, for example, if I buy a new phone, a Chinese phone, right, and it comes with so many social media apps already installed in the phone, and it just feels so overwhelming, right? Because those are so many apps and a lot of notifications, and it just feels a little bit overwhelming. And we know that the Chinese market and the China social media landscape is quite complex, and it can be also a lot of noise, right, if we don't use it in the right way. But China's internet is also unique, right? It has many nuances that we need to understand in order to really have a clear and effective strategy. Now, there are some general aspects about China's social media landscape. For example, we all more or less are aware that Western platforms became gradually unavailable since the firewall of China started after 2000, something. And many localized versions of these westernized apps appeared. And so we saw localized versions for Instagram, for YouTube, for all of these platforms that we use in the West or in the rest of the world, pretty much, right? It's not only in the West. So more recently, we saw that LinkedIn decided to cease operations, not cease operations in China. Again, it's just they call it a strategic choice, right? To have a localized version of LinkedIn. And what happened was that many of these China social media platforms actually outgrow the original ones, right? So even though they were a way, a strategy to replace and to substitute these platforms, the truth is these Chinese platforms actually became in many ways much better or with many more functions than the original ones. And we now see incredible success of some of them. For example, TikTok, right, which is a success overseas and in China as well, right? So we also have other aspects. For example, email marketing and websites aren't as popular in China, right? Tell me when was, unless you use email for work, what can happen, but isn't that frequent? When was the last time that you sent an email in China for someone Chinese, right? Or, you know, when you think about a startup, what is the first thing that a startup thinks about creating in first place? Is it a website? Probably not, right? Probably is WeChat, right? That is the first reaction. It's the first platform that most brands choose because first of all is cheaper, right? You don't need that much investment in the beginning unless you want mini apps and other added things. But the thing is, China social media works differently, and email is not used that much, right? We use WeChat for pretty much everything, and we can use other apps, but WeChat is that super app that we use for everything from morning to evening, every day of the week, always, right? And for example, credit cards aren't popular in China either, right? I mean, at least they weren't as popular, right? I think China skipped a lot of these things that we were used in the West. And so these are the nuances that I also want you to look at because they are very important when we want to understand China social media. Now, something very important when you are creating for content for China social media is also understanding that the majority of people use smartphones, right, in China. So when people access social media, people are actually looking into screens, right? People are not really into small screens, right? Into smartphone screens, and that is important because when we speak about, for example, WeChat articles or other formats, we will edit them in that format, right? We will need to make sure that it's a good format, visually speaking, as well for smartphones. And also, for example, it needs to be more interactive, right? Because the screen is smaller, so we want also to make it a little bit more easier to read. China social media platforms have some kind of e-commerce directly integrated. So this is something about China social media that I think isn't as strong in other platforms, in other social media platforms around the world, is definitely this e-commerce function that you can access in many China social media platforms, and that right now exists in pretty much every China social media platform. And there is this nature of social commerce in China that we don't see as much, or at least I think China is ahead of time in that regard. Because consumers can go in China can go straight from content to actually purchasing, right? To buy. And I think there's where innovation is actually happening a lot right now in China. We see a lot of live streamings, right? Live streamings is one of the main ways that people used to sell in China, and it's a very common thing. Let me just look into the chat to see if we have some. Okay, WeChat has been too much used, right? Okay, so we also have QR codes, right? They are not new. They have been around for a long time. But the thing is, in China, you pretty much rely on them for every single thing, right? We cannot live without them. Right now, in order for me to be able to work and to go to my office, I need to present a QR code, my health code, every 24 hours, right? So this is really something that I cannot live with. But ordering food, when you want to open a bike, to unlock a bike outside, or for pretty much everything, you need to use QR codes in China, right? We also have KOLs, KOCs. KOLs are the key opinion leaders, and KOCs, key opinion consumers. And why are they so important in China? So a lot of consumer decisions in China are still based on these people, right? And they are much different than influencers, right? They are different from influencers, even though we might compare them to the Western influencers, but they are different. And the reason why is that they really are usually experts in a certain area, in a certain sector. And so they are trusted for that. I know that also happens in the Western world, but I think it's a bit different. The nuances are also very different in China. We see that during many years there was multiple scandals related to fake goods or unsafe products on e-commerce platforms, and so KOLs and KOCs, they became that bridge between the consumer and the platform, because they allowed trust, right? So what these KOLs or KOCs did was really to build that trust, so people could purchase and could trust the platform. And that's why they are so important. So that's also a little bit of why KOLs and KOCs are different. Because, for example, KOCs, and I know that KOCs, not everyone is so familiar with the term KOC. KOCs are just everyday consumers with with only few consumers, with only few hundred followers, leaving online reviews. What they do is leaving online reviews on products. They are more and more important in China, and exactly because of their capability to relate, and because they are very trustworthy as well. Okay. Let me see. I guess maybe we are not far away from the fingerprints identity in the near future, when then QR code no longer needed. Interesting thought, David. Thank you. So today, for the sake of time and this time together, I won't be talking about all China's social media platforms, of course, because we definitely don't have time for that. And I won't be talking about all of these either. But I want you to pay attention to these platforms, because they could potentially be the platforms that you want to use for your China social media strategy for wellness. So we have Zhihu, we have WeChat, we have Bilibili, we have Red or Xiaohongshu, Weibo, and we have Douyin. And these are let's say, the biggest social media platforms at the moment in China, and definitely the more relevant ones for us as wellness professionals.
It's public data, right? Everyone can access it. Anyone can actually.
Bill, sorry, could you repeat? I think Bill was talking. All right, let's continue then. So I think there's a message, no question, okay. So in terms of social media platforms that I would definitely recommend for wellness professionals is, first of all, WeChat. And it's not as if you have an option. If you live in China, you definitely have WeChat, right? But you can use it much better, right? So there's a lot of functions on WeChat. There's a lot of little secrets on WeChat that I'm going to go through today that will definitely enhance your strategy on WeChat as a brand for your business, and also for your personal branding, which is extremely important. And then we have Xiaohongshu, right, which is also an extremely powerful platform. It's a much more open platform for foreign trends, and so it's much more open also for for content in different languages. For the consumers are also pretty much the target audience for the wellness industry. And we will see that it doesn't matter if it's for coaches or for the wellness industry in general, Xiaohongshu is a very powerful platform. So let's start from WeChat, right? So we have WeChat is something that we cannot live without in China, pretty much, right? And I like this metaphor of the Swiss Army knife, right? I think WeChat is our Swiss Army knife in China, because there are so many tools within the toolbox that we can explore, that we can use. We can use WeChat for pretty much everything. And that's what makes it so addictive. We cannot really live without it. I've tried to delete my social media platforms before, like a couple of years ago. I deleted Facebook, I deleted Instagram. So I did, back then I didn't have any social media platforms, but WeChat, I couldn't get rid of WeChat, of course, because I was living in China. And that's something that everyone who lives in China experiences, right? You need WeChat for everything. You cannot really do your basic routines without WeChat. But basically, WeChat is very powerful because it has a lot of apps within apps. And it's much more comprehensive than WhatsApp or Facebook. People usually tend to compare that, saying that WeChat is China's Facebook or China's WhatsApp. But that's not accurate at all. I think there's no term of comparison between them, because there's so many things inside of WeChat. WeChat is a whole universe, right? And so it has a very comprehensive ecosystem. And basically, you don't need to leave WeChat. You can do a lot of your transactions, a lot of your routines without ever leaving WeChat, right? You can spend the whole day on WeChat and have your main social needs basically guaranteed, served, right? And why WeChat? So first of all, it is the most powerful social media network in China. WeChat is huge, as I mentioned. People spend most of their time on WeChat. This is, I think, everyone that lives or has lived in China knows that it's literally the place that we spend the most time in China, right? You wake up, the first thing that you look in the morning is probably WeChat. During your day, throughout your day, even at work, because WeChat is both a social a social platform that you use for your private life, but also for your professional life, for your career. So you use it a lot for professional contacts, and also for your job, for your daily job. You use it to talk to the family, to your friends. You use it to talk to your boss, to your colleagues. So it's a very cozy platform in the sense that it's all about your network, right? It's your private network in a sense. It is not as open as other platforms that we will see. And everyone has WeChat, from first tier cities to low tier cities, and it's a very comprehensive ecosystem. And the good news is you can generate results in terms of marketing and branding with zero budget, or nearly zero budget, let's say, because you can use a lot of different functions. So where people spend time on WeChat, people spend time on private chats, on groups, moments, WeChat moments, channels. That it was a new function from last year or 2 years ago, something like that, right? But it's pretty recent. Then we have the official accounts, that are different types of official accounts. And you have third-party pages, right? Because sometimes you go from WeChat to other pages through QR codes or links that are linked in an official account, or in your channel, or whatever you want to link. Now, in terms of WeChat marketing, and I know many of you are probably familiar with some of this. So the first thing that most people consider is the private pools and communities, groups. So WeChat works around these groups that are groups of people that have the same interests, basically. And you can see that there are even people that sell WeChat groups. I don't know if you have saw that on WeChat, but there are people who sell WeChat groups, because the power of WeChat groups is so big, right? That people even sell them. It's quite valuable. It's a quite valuable resource to have nowadays. As a professional, is also very important to have your own community, your own WeChat group, and to manage it, right? Because it's not only about having the group, but it's also about working on it. Then you have personal and professional accounts, so your network, right? That everyone that you have in your WeChat account. You have the official accounts, the articles. You have mini programs, which are apps within WeChat. You have WeChat advertising, which can be a possibility, but I wouldn't recommend as you start off, because in order to advertise officially on WeChat, you need to have a budget of at least 50K RMB just to start. So that is the minimum amount for spending. But there are many options from there. Then you have live streaming, which is something that you should consider, especially if you have a business, but requires application. So you as a foreigner, there are many restrictions, and you also need to be very careful in terms of the content that you share. We know that in the wellness sector, we have many people working with spirituality, with certain things that in China are considered taboo, or even promoting independent thinking, for example, can be something that might trigger the system. Certain keywords may trigger the system. We have experienced that recently with Alicia, with Soulwell. We use the word chakra, right? And we were not even thinking about it, even though we were aware that it was a bit sensitive, but we really didn't put a lot of thought on it. And then the article was rejected, and we needed to change some words. So it's very important to also pay a lot of attention to the regulations of China's social media, especially WeChat is quite strict. Then we have, of course, KOLs, bloggers, and influencers that you can consider depending on your niche. You can get in touch with certain people that are doing social media in China in that specific niche, and maybe do live streaming together or doing some online events together that can be very interesting in terms of marketing and to drive in traffic. Now, challenges. The challenges of WeChat are pretty much that people usually don't necessarily come with the intention to buy when they first arrive on WeChat, because again, WeChat is essentially its foundation is as a platform for friends, for family, for your small network. But people don't come with that intention to buy as they do when they use other platforms like Taobao, right? So it means that you need to use marketing in a way that you basically contribute to the experience by adding some value, right? You don't want just to interrupt with ads all of a sudden. Actually, WeChat is very, it's not really ads friendly, so it's much more user oriented in that sense. For example, Facebook, we see that on Facebook, the news feed is the prime thing on Facebook, right? Because Facebook gets its profit from advertising, right? Mainly. But in terms of WeChat, it's not that way, right? We see that chats are the main thing. And then you have the moments, which are more like a secondary thing. On Facebook, it's the opposite, right? The chats are something smaller, are something secondary. So basically, brands need to position themselves in a way that the product or whatever we want to sell is in the right places and framed in the way that doesn't interfere with the user experience. Because I think on WeChat people are a little bit more sensitive when there's content that it's over promotional or too much sales oriented. And then we have the WeChat official accounts. So we have essentially two different types of official accounts on WeChat. There are more, but I think for us as wellness professionals and when we speak about foreigners mainly, those are not as interesting for us. So I'm going to focus on these two: subscription accounts and service accounts. The subscription account, basically, it's more oriented for news or for brands that need to publish a lot of content daily. It was originally for bloggers, for media, so it's suitable for a lot of content, but not really when you just want to get in touch with your target audience once in a while, because this one does not require daily pushes, but you have access to daily pushes. And then you also have the thing is, subscription accounts are less visible. So you see here from this screenshot, you cannot see them as much. They are in a folder and you choose to intentionally go and check them, right? So they are a little bit less invasive compared to the service account. The service account is much more visible. It usually pops up directly in your WeChat. It's a little bit more invasive and it's very visible. The downside of the service account is that you can only push 4 times a month, which is pretty much 1 time a week, right? But in each time that you push, you can actually push more articles. Like you can push around 5 or 6 articles at a time. Of course, that is not necessarily something good because, I think that in China's social media, because people are already so overwhelmed with information, not only in China, of course, not only in China social media, but in general, I think quality should be a priority, not quantity, because otherwise your target audience is going to be, its attention is going to be divided into multiple articles, and you want them to see that one article that has what you want them to see, right? So you can also have that balance when it comes to articles. But basically the service account it can't be ignored, right? Because it's very visible, and I know that there are some options to kind of minimize it now and to make it less visible, but it's still usually quite obvious. And in certain brands put the picture in the service account as like a face, for example, and it looks exactly like if it was a friend. I have a friend who has an official account. We with the same profile picture has his own private account, and for me it feels the same when I receive a notification from the official account or from him. It shows up in my chats pretty much as the same thing. So it's something quite visible, and if it's very promotional and people are not interested in the content or they don't find the content relevant, you have a high chance of being unfollowed, right? So this is the downside also of service accounts. The advantage is, of course, high visibility, right? Because it's very visible. Don't underestimate your personal accounts, right? Because I see many people very concerned with having an official account and having, a lot of other functions on WeChat, but your personal account is your primary source of of connections, and it's a very powerful one. Whenever I have a product that I want to sell, whether it's a course or a book or whatever, what I do is contacting the 5 to 10 people that I know in my network, in my WeChat, that I know that might possibly be interested in my products, right? Because I already know that I mean, in terms of my products, I know already a few people that might be interested, and by reaching out directly to them is usually a personal interaction, and it works quite well in my perspective. Now, people of course share WeChat accounts in China more than they do with business cards, right? People in China don't really exchange that much business cards, right? And it's also very good because in official accounts, you cannot add people into groups, right? You cannot communicate directly with people on your official account unless they proactively contact you. But in your personal account, the good thing is that you can send messages, you can interact very easily. And in China, many businesses use personal accounts, which is, if we see it from a marketing perspective, is not 100%, let's say, legal, but it's something that everyone does, right? And it's very much accepted everywhere. The downside is that it's limited to 5,000 contacts, which I think it's a very decent number, right? At least for small businesses. And then you have group marketing. In group marketing, as I refer, it's also a very important tool that many of us have. Having a clear value proposition to the group is very important. The community management is very important, and we know that communities are more and more important, and they are very important on WeChat. And when it comes to wellness, that is the case as well, right? It's very, very important. And some small tips: welcoming people who join the group, right? These are some basics that I'm sure most of you already know. But set regular topics. Make an agenda for the way that you also want to interact with your groups, with your communities, and encourage discussion amongst members. Get and share information, and last, of course, the call to action that needs to be present. Promote events to specific audiences, right, for your specific audience. Wechat articles. This is something also very important. I have here some examples from Solwell's page. If you don't follow the page yet, feel free to do so. Doing some marketing here. And the thing is, when it comes to Wechat articles, visual elements are extremely important. You don't want people to feel bored. You want to captivate them, right? So the visual elements are usually quite important, not only text, because I see many Wechat articles that are just black and white and just text. I cannot read them. Like, I personally, it's too much for me. And we already have so much information on Wechat, so it's a no for me. So I think that's something very important. Linking official accounts in your Wechat articles, including advertising within articles, which is the advertising option. And of course, don't forget the call to action that should be present in your Wechat articles, right? So you need to promote your content and your expertise in a certain topic, but of course you also need to have your call to action somewhere in the article. And you can also link mini programs, YoPay, video account, right? And be aware of regulations and keywords. Okay, so now we've done Wechat, the essentials of Wechat. And I want to introduce you a very important platform for wellness, because Wechat, I know that most of you are aware, even though there might be some functions that you are not so aware of. But Little Red Book, or Red, it's something that might be a little bit newer for you. So I just want to ask if you have any questions or if we can move forward. Okay, I was seeing another message. Let me see. Cannot see the chat. Okay. So Xiaohongshu, or Little Red Book, it all started pretty much with people, Chinese people, going abroad and sharing their firsthand experience on Xiaohongshu. Whether it was for traveling, studying, or working abroad, or even, for mixed couples. So for overseas Chinese that went abroad and have some, some different lifestyles, or some different perspectives, some different experiences. So Xiaohongshu started from there, right? So we will see that traveling, education, and these, foreign brands, or just, foreign countries, foreign languages are some of the key topics on Xiaohongshu. Then there is a key topic and a key trend on Xiaohongshu, which is pregnancy journey and mother-baby topics, or family topics in general. So it's a very powerful social media platform for parenting coaches. I don't know if Kath is here today, but it's definitely very important for families. I work in a family club, right? And so being in touch with KOLs from this industry is something very important for someone that works with families, because you have the KOLs or KOCs on Xiaohongshu, and you can interact with them, and that will also help a lot. And you can, of course, have your content on these platforms, but I would definitely suggest that you have bilingual content. And I know that language might be a barrier, but again, I would definitely translate content as much as I can, because I think in China, translation is like having subtitles in a video or having bilingual articles is almost an expectation, right? Especially the subtitles. It's something that is people already expected, because you see that even videos only in Chinese usually have subtitles, right? So for parenting coaches, this is a very interesting platform. DIY, it became very trendy, especially after the pandemic after COVID-19. It became very relevant to share hobbies, expressive creation for art coaches, right? Which so it's really a platform where you share things that you do by yourself, that you share, that even some vulnerable aspects of yourself. For example, the pregnancy journey, mothers sharing their stories, about their pregnancy and their babies and their children, and all of those experiences. And people usually say that Xiaohongshu is the Instagram of China. It is similar in terms of content. Of course, it's very different, but we can say that in terms of general model, it is similar. And it's also all about, for example, cooking. It was also a big trend on Xiaohongshu. Do yourself, do something yourself, right? In terms of cooking, or online physical activities as well, right? Fitness became one of the hottest trends. So for personal coaches, for fitness coaches, this is also something very important. For yoga, meditation, hypnosis, NLP. I think all of that is very popular right now on Xiaohongshu. Even affirmations, how to program your mind, things like that are quite popular on Xiaohongshu. I've also seen, for example, how to call it, law of attraction, right? Even videos about law of attraction, even though it isn't as popular in China, but I've seen some videos about that, right? Not videos, usually pictures, but also some videos. Something that is also very interesting for us, wellness industry, is the tourism part, because on Xiaohongshu, it's the perfect place for advertising wellness retreats, for example, to advertise, wellness experiences in general. So I think in general, for wellness experiences in nature, yoga retreats or meditation retreats or whatever, I think, because Xiaohongshu, it's pretty much after the pandemic started, it put a lot of focus on domestic tourism, because people could not go abroad, right? So they focused more on domestic tourism. So I think all wellness sector really has a lot of potential on Xiaohongshu. And as I said, because it's a more foreign-oriented platform, so it has a lot of also foreign content creators on Xiaohongshu, including people who teach languages. For example, there are a lot of language tips and things like that on Xiaohongshu. Now, why red for us, right? For wellness professionals, because you can share, it's a platform for lifestyle, for beauty, for fashion. And here, when I speak about fashion, I'm also including, for example, yoga clothing, right? That is one of the industries that has been growing a lot recently. Cosmetics, wellness in general. So as I said, meditation, yoga, wellness experiences in general, self-development, health, fitness. And users are mostly young females who blog about their daily lives. And we saw that the wellness industry in China has also a majority of females, right, who are the key audience. So we see that matches very well Red's target audience. And it's also a lot about education on Xiaohongshu. So as I said, a lot of language teaching or hard and soft skills. So it's very interesting for people who want to share knowledge in general as well. But it's knowledge, it won't be something, it won't be a big article like you do on WeChat. It's usually shorter text, but much more text that you would expect, for example, on Instagram, right? On Instagram, you usually have less text. Now, I am conscious of time. I will just briefly, very briefly, 5 minutes, go through some other platforms that I find might be interesting. And then I will wrap up and we have some time for questions. Is that okay? Adrian, is that okay? Thank you. So Douyin. Douyin, I don't believe that this is the most important platform for you. I might be biased because I don't like Douyin. But the thing is, Douyin has a very different target audience, right? It's not like Xiaohongshu that has this, audience that we just mentioned, that wellness oriented audience. We have people from different backgrounds. Usually Douyin was associated with less educated people from from third tier cities and things like that. So it was not something so popular in the very beginning, so something so popular on big in the big cities. Right now it is pretty much popular everywhere. But there's still a lot of content that is more for entertainment, for dancing, right? Even though there's not the only thing, but you still can see a lot of funny videos, and it's short videos. It's a short videos platform. You can use it if you really want, and I would suggest that if you really want to use Douyin, that you use it in a later stage. When you are already popular on other platforms like Xiaohongshu, then you use Douyin. And you can also use Douyin as a teaser, right? So you publish short videos about your content, but just your best moments, or the best parts of your classes, or certain things that you think might attract people. But again, just be aware that this is not really a platform oriented for self-development or oriented for education or wellness, but it's a tool that you can use, right? And the thing that you have to have attention to here is very important to make your content native to the platform that you are using. So whether it's Douyin or Xiaohongshu or WeChat, you need to create your voice in a way that fits the platform, right? And for example, on WeChat, brands usually are like friends, right? But on Douyin, it's another approach, right? It's not really that same brand voice. So you need to analyze that as well. And on Douyin, you are also expected to publish daily content. So it's a much faster speed audience. So it's also expected, for more audience. Then you have Zhihu. Zhihu might be very interesting for wellness professionals. There's actually one full section for wellness and for therapy, for medicine, because Zhihu is pretty much for sharing expertise about a certain topic. So you have knowledge sharing, content marketing, pretty much. And you have a lot of university professors, specialists on a certain topic that share their expertise there. So you can whether ask questions or answer questions, right? And there's a lot of round tables as well with experts that the platform itself organizes. And that is a great chance for you to have, to be exposed, to have exposure Because if you are in one of those round tables organized by the platform, then you will definitely have a lot of exposure. But in some cases, you even have to pay for that, right? So it's something that you might consider, but it's a very much Chinese-oriented platform. It's fully in Chinese, pretty much, from what I've learned about it. So it might be a challenge from that side, and that's why I say it's probably not the first thing that you want to, to try. But if you have a translator and someone that you want to work with for the long term, this could be a very interesting platform also to be in. And also to educate the industry, right? Because as you share more knowledge, you are educating the industry, you are preparing the market for your business. Then you have Bilibili. Very quickly, Bilibili started off as a platform for animation, comics, and games. So it was a platform pretty much focused on that sector. And right now it has expanded its scope, and you have a lot of vloggers there as well. So it's long content, so you have content a bit like YouTube, right? Like 20 minutes kind of content. So it's a little bit longer. You have entertainment content mainly, but it's for example vlogging, right? That kind of entertainment, not really like short videos on Douyin or Kuaishou, which are very small pieces of content just to make you laugh. So it's really it can be educational as well. And it is focused on the young generation, so the target audience is pretty much the young generation, and has a subculture. So it's a platform that you really need to understand before you start publishing, because has a lot of words, a lot of expressions, a lot of emojis, things that you need to understand from the platform in order to interact with your target audience. And it shares, it's still very interesting for people from the gaming industry and things like that, of course. And finally, Weibo. Weibo, it's a wider platform. It's one of the most used platforms in China as well. But it's pretty much where people share their daily thoughts. It's a bit like China's Twitter in a way. So it's where you share, your daily thoughts, but with people that have the same interests as you. So it's much wider than WeChat, because on WeChat you only have your target audience, but here you have a much more wider audience, and it's very good for hot topics. So it's something, if you want your content to be seen, you should also follow the trends of the platform, because the platform promotes the content that basically follows the themes of the platform. Okay. And it's very good for e-commerce as well. Has a very good integrated e-commerce function inside of itself. Last tips for China social media. Focus, as you start, focus on one or two platforms. Don't do a lot of platforms, because you really want to understand your audience. You really want to understand that platform, and you just won't have the time or the resources for all. If you have, then perfect, but I think focusing on one or two platforms, it's good. Quality over quantity, right? I think this is valid for everything in life. But definitely for Chinese social media, be consistent. It doesn't matter if your content is awesome or not, but if you are consistent, you have more chances of really having more audience and more people following you and being interested in your content. Don't be too invasive or promotional, especially on WeChat, remember. So you want to keep that balance. Speak the native language of the platform, right? You need to speak the voice of the platform. Be personal. If your brand grows, have ambassadors that talk about your brand. Have cooperation with KOLs or KOCs, and take advantage of your strengths, because maybe you have a certain expertise on a certain topic that is trending in China or not, but you have that strength, right? Some people have, Chinese skills. This is a strength, right? That you can definitely use. You don't only need to produce content. Like, for example, I think for a lot of years, foreigners would produce content in Chinese only about their experiences in China and the difference between cultures and interracial couples and things like that. But there's a lot more things that you can do if you speak Chinese, or if you have a translator, right? And follow hot trends, but remember to be unique and create original content. And something that you can also do is set up your own stores, your e-commerce functions within these platforms. Thank you so much. And I know some things that I've said about China social media, for Chinese people, those are things that they grew up with. Not grew up, but they are quite familiar with China's social media in many cases, right? But I know that especially for foreigners in China, I feel that China's social media might be really a bit overwhelming to in the beginning. I still feel that in some senses it is, because it's so foreign for us. It's so different from what we are used to have, right?
Boom! You made it here! Good on you. Make sure you click the subscribe button below and check out the playlist at the end. If you'd like to come along to our Sunday sessions where we host a live free Q&A for our students and members, you're welcome. I'll see you there.